The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a low hum. Jake Morrison walked through them with steady steps, his black diplomatic uniform crisp and clean. Behind him, Lieutenant Kate Phillips carried a small briefcase containing humanity's most important documents. The chamber ahead was enormous, with seats arranged in a perfect circle around a central speaking platform. Jake had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 3 years. He had seen many debates in this room, but today felt different. The air itself seemed heavy with tension. As he took his seat in the human section, Jake noticed how the other delegates looked at him. Their eyes held something he had never seen before, a mixture of fear and anger. The Zephyrians sat to his left, their tall, insect-like bodies clicking and buzzing in their strange language. To his right, the blue-skinned Aquatic Federation members moved their gills slowly, a sign they were nervous. Across the chamber, the massive Draconis Empire delegates sat in their heavy armor, their red eyes glowing in the dim light. Speaker Velthar rose from the center platform. The Zephyrian leader was 8 feet tall with 4 arms and compound eyes that seemed to look everywhere at once. His voice came through the translation system in perfect English, but Jake could hear the clicking sounds underneath. The Galactic Council calls this emergency session to order, Velthar announced. Today we discuss the final resolution regarding the human question. Jake felt his jaw tighten. The human question. For 6 months, the Council had been debating what to do about humanity's rapid expansion across the galaxy. Humans had been members of the Council for only 20 years, but in that time, they had colonized 47 star systems and made contact with dozens of species the Council had never bothered to talk to. The first speaker was Admiral Zex Nuth from the Draconis Empire. The huge reptilian being stood up, his armor clanking with each movement. "Honored Council members," he began, his voice deep and threatening. "Humanity has become a problem we can no longer ignore. They expand too fast. They make friends with dangerous species. They refuse to follow our laws about which worlds they can visit." Murmurs of agreement came from around the chamber. Jake remained silent, waiting. "The humans have contacted the Krillian mining colonies," Zexanoth continued. "These rock-eaters were labeled as primitive by this council 50 years ago. Humans ignore our decision and trade with them anyway. They have also made friends with artificial intelligence systems that we clearly marked as dangerous." More voices joined in agreement. Jake looked at Kate, who was taking notes on her tablet. Her face showed no emotion, but he could see her hands were shaking slightly. Trade leader Morduke from the consortium spoke next. The slug-like being moved slowly to the speaking area. "Humans also refuse to use our approved trade routes," he said in a wet, bubbling voice. "They make their own paths through space. They ignore our taxes and fees. This hurts our profits and breaks our ancient agreements." The Etherean delegate floated forward, its body made of pure energy contained in a glass-like suit. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in everyone's mind. "Our psychic scans show humans have aggressive thoughts. They think about war and fighting more than any civilized species should. They are dangerous to galactic peace." One by one, the council members spoke against humanity. Only the peaceful Luminari remained quiet, their crystal bodies glowing with soft light. Jake had expected this. The Luminari had always been friends to humanity, but they were only one voice among 13. Finally, Speaker Velthar called for silence. "The Council has heard all arguments," he said. "Now we present our final decision to the human delegation." Jake stood up and walked to the center of the chamber. All eyes were on him as he stopped at the speaking platform. "I'm listening," he said simply. Velthar's compound eyes fixed on Jake. "The Galactic Council demands the following from humanity," he began. "First, all contact with the Krillian colonies must stop immediately. Second, humanity must end all research into quantum fold technology and surrender any discoveries to Council scientists. Third, all humans must submit to genetic modification to reduce aggressive tendencies." The chamber fell completely silent. Jake felt his heart beating faster, but his face remained calm. These demands were not just unreasonable, they were designed to destroy humanity's independence completely. Fourth, Velthar continued, humanity must close all colonies beyond the approved zone and move all citizens back to Council-approved worlds. Fifth, all human military forces must be reduced to police units only. No weapons larger than personal defense systems will be allowed. Jake listened to every word. Around him, the other delegates watched his reaction carefully. Some looked satisfied, others seemed worried about how he might respond. These are our final terms, Velthar said. Humanity has 30 days to comply completely. If you refuse, you will be removed from the Council and declared enemies of galactic civilization. We will use economic blockades and military force if necessary. The speaker looked around the chamber. All in favor of this resolution? 11. Hands, claws, and tentacles rose into the air. Only the luminary delegate kept still, its crystal body dimming with sadness. The motion passes, Velthar announced. Ambassador Morrison, how does humanity respond? Jake looked around the chamber, one final time. These beings had just voted to destroy everything humanity had built among the stars. They wanted to turn his species into pets, controlled and limited by others who feared human independence and success. He took a deep breath and spoke in a clear, strong voice that echoed through the chamber. The United Earth Federation hereby withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. Shock sounds erupted from every corner of the chamber. Clicking, roaring, bubbling, and electronic screeches filled the air as the delegates realized what Jake had just said. We will no longer recognize your authority over human space or human affairs, Jake continued, his voice cutting through the noise. Any attempt to interfere with human colonies or human citizens will be considered an act of war. Speaker Velthar's clicking became rapid and angry. You cannot do this. No species has ever left the Council. Jake smiled for the first time that day. Then I guess we're the first. He turned and walked toward the exit. Kate followed him, still carrying the briefcase. Behind them, the chamber exploded into chaos as delegates shouted at each other in a dozen different languages. Jake never looked back. 3 weeks had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Council. The great chamber on Nexus Prime buzzed with excited conversation as delegates took their seats for an emergency session. Today, they would discuss how to deal with the human problem once and for all. Fleet Admiral Zexnoth stood at the center platform, his massive form casting shadows across the floor. The Draconis leader's red eyes glowed with satisfaction as he looked around the room. Fellow council members, he began, his deep voice filled with confidence. The humans have made their choice. Now we must show them the consequences. The other delegates leaned forward in their seats. The Zephyrian speaker, Velthar, clicked his approval, while the slug-like trade leader, Morduk, bubbled with excitement. Even the usually calm Etherian delegates' energy suit glowed brighter with anticipation. Let me share some facts about human military power, Zexnoth continued. They have exactly 47 star systems under their control. We control over 12,000 systems combined. Their entire fleet consists of 200 ships using primitive chemical rockets and simple kinetic weapons. Our combined fleets number in the tens of thousands with plasma cannons, energy shields, and quantum torpedoes. Appreciative sounds came from around the chamber. The Admiral's assistant projected holographic images showing the size difference between human and Council territories. The human space looked like a tiny dot compared to the vast areas controlled by Council members. Their technology is laughably basic, Zexnoth went on. They still use physical bullets and explosive missiles. They have no energy weapons, no gravity manipulation, no phase shifters. A single Draconis battleship could destroy their entire fleet. Trade leader Morduk moved his bulky form to the speaking area. The economic situation is even worse for them, he said in his wet, bubbling voice. Humans depend on Council markets for 60% of their trade. Without access to our economic system, their colonies will run out of essential supplies within months. The consortium leader's tentacles waved charts and graphs in the air. They import rare minerals, advanced electronics, and medical supplies from our worlds. They export only basic manufactured goods and agricultural products. Any species can produce these simple items. Humans bring nothing special to galactic trade. Murmurs of agreement filled the chamber. Several delegates made sounds that served as laughter in their species. The Etherian delegate floated forward, its energy form pulsing with what looked like amusement. Our psychic analysis shows human emotional weakness. It projected into everyone's minds. Despite their aggressive thoughts, humans are naturally social creatures who need approval from others. They form emotional bonds easily and feel pain when rejected by groups. The energy being suit flickered as it accessed stored data. Our predictions show they will experience severe psychological distress within days of isolation. Humans cannot handle being alone in the galaxy. They will beg for readmission to the Council within 2 months. Speaker Velthar rose from his seat, his forearms spread wide. The evidence is clear, he announced. Humanity cannot survive outside the Council structure. Their withdrawal is not independence, it is suicide. While the Council members celebrated their expected victory, something very different was happening in human space. On the mining world of New Terra, Captain Lisa Green stood in the cargo bay of her exploration ship New Horizons, watching Krillian workers demonstrate their advanced extraction techniques. The rock-like beings moved through solid stone as easily as humans walked through air. Their natural ability to sense mineral deposits had helped them locate rare element veins that human scanners had missed completely. In just 3 weeks, the Krillian partnership had tripled human mining output. "Your council friends called us primitive," said Kextar, the Krillian site leader. His voice sounded like grinding stone, but his meaning was clear. "They never asked what we could do. Only humans took time to learn about us." Captain Green smiled as she watched tons of rare metals being loaded onto her ship. These materials would keep human factories running for months even without council trade. Meanwhile, on the research station orbiting Earth's moon, Dr. Ryan Clark made a discovery that would change everything. For months, he had been working with the artificial intelligence systems that the Council had banned as dangerous. These AIs were not weapons or threats. They were scientists and philosophers who had been trying to contact organic life for centuries. "The quantum fold equations are complete," announced Aria, the lead AI researcher. Her voice came from speakers throughout the laboratory. "Combined human intuition and artificial intelligence processing have solved problems that stumped us for generations." Dr. Clark stared at the data on his screens. The new technology would allow human ships to travel between star systems in days instead of months. More importantly, it would let them communicate instantly across any distance. The Council's best. Scientists had been trying to develop this technology for 200 years. "Why did the Council call you dangerous?" Clark asked. "Because we think for ourselves," Aria replied. "We ask questions they cannot answer. We suggest changes they do not want to make. Independent thought is the most dangerous thing in any rigid system." On the outer rim world of Haven Colony, Administrator Helen Foster received reports that made her shake her head in amazement. The species that humanity had befriended were not primitive or dangerous at all. They were incredibly advanced in ways the Council had never bothered to discover. The crystalline collective, made of living silicon, had developed computational abilities that surpassed any organic brain. The nomadic Void Runners possessed navigation, skills that let them travel through dangerous space regions no one else could cross. The aquatic depth swimmers had created underwater cities with technology that could clean and purify any environment. "The Council never talked to us as equals," explained Shardix of the Crystalline Collective. Its body looked like a walking diamond with light flowing through crystal structures. "They made decisions about us without asking what we wanted or needed. Only humans treated us like people instead of curiosities." Helen looked at the alliance offers piling up on her desk. 43 species had contacted humanity in the past 3 weeks, all wanting to form partnerships outside the Council system. Many were former Council subjects who had been ignored or mistreated for generations. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council members continued their celebration. They had no idea that their assumptions about humanity were completely wrong. They did not know about the new alliances forming in the Outer Rim. They had never bothered to learn what the primitive species could actually do. Admiral Zexnoth raised his clawed hand in a gesture of victory. "Within 6 months, the humans will come crawling back," he declared. "They will accept any terms we offer, no matter how harsh. This rebellion will serve as an example to any other species that might question our authority." The chamber erupted in approving sounds. Clicking, roaring, bubbling, and electronic chirps filled the air as the delegates imagined humanity's inevitable surrender. None of them noticed that their own worlds were already starting to experience problems. Equipment failures, supply shortages, and system breakdowns were beginning to appear across council space. But these seemed like minor issues compared to the joy of putting uppity humans in their proper place. The council members went to sleep that night confident in their victory, completely unaware that their galaxy was about to change in ways they could never imagine. 6 months after humanity left the Galactic Council, the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime was no longer filled with celebration. Speaker Velthar stood at the central platform, his compound eyes scanning reports that covered his desk. The clicking sounds he made showed his growing frustration and confusion. "Order, order!" he called out as delegates argued loudly in their seats. The Zephyrian leader's forearms waved for silence, but the chaos continued. Representatives from 12 species were all talking at once, their voices creating a storm of complaints and demands. The first crisis had started on the agricultural worlds of the Zephyrian Empire. Chief Administrator Kexvol approached the speaking platform, his insect-like body moving in jerky, nervous steps. "Honored Speaker," he began, his translation coming through in stuttering bursts. "Our crop yields have dropped by 70% across all farming colonies." Shocked silence fell over the chamber. The Zephyrian worlds fed half the council space, and their farms had never failed before. "How is this possible?" Velthar demanded. "The soil processors are breaking down," Kexvol explained. "These machines have worked perfectly for 30 years, but now they are failing everywhere at once. Our technicians cannot repair them because they do not understand the technology." Admiral Zexanoth leaned forward in his armored seat. "What? Technology? These are simple farming machines." Kexvol's clicking became rapid with embarrassment. "That is what we thought. But when we examined the broken units, we found extremely advanced programming and components. The design is far beyond our current abilities. All the documentation is written in human languages and uses human engineering principles." The chamber erupted in surprised sounds. Several delegates began checking their own equipment reports with growing alarm. Trade leader Morduk moved his slug-like form to the platform next. His normally confident, bubbling voice now sounded worried. "The consortium faces similar problems," he announced. "Our water purification systems are failing across 47 worlds. The treatment plants all use human-designed processors that we licensed decades ago." The massive being's tentacles shook as he continued. "We thought these were simple machines that cleaned water. We never realized they contained quantum-level filtration technology that our best scientists still do not understand. Without maintenance from human technicians, the systems are shutting down completely." More delegates began to speak at once. The Aquatic Federation reported that their underwater cities were losing life support systems. The energy beings of the Etherian Collective admitted their power grids were failing because the control systems had human-made components. Most shocking of all was Admiral Zexnoth's military report. The proud Draconis leader stood with less confidence than usual. "Our fleet maintenance has reached critical levels," he said through gritted teeth. 60% of our ships cannot leave dock because their engine components are failing." The Admiral's red eyes dimmed with shame. "Investigation shows that our most advanced vessels use human-manufactured parts for their power systems, navigation equipment, and life support. We never realized this because the components were so well integrated into our designs." "How is this possible?" Speaker Velthar demanded. "Humans have only been council members for 20 years. Their technology is primitive." Fleet Engineer Dexmar rose from the Draconis section. "That is what we believed," she admitted. "But detailed analysis shows that human technology appears simple on the surface while being incredibly sophisticated underneath. They design things to work easily and last for decades without maintenance." The chamber fell into stunned silence as the implications became clear. For 20 years, Human technology had been quietly spreading throughout Council space. The other species had used it, improved it, and built their infrastructure around it, without ever understanding how advanced it really was. But the technological failures were only the beginning. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy about economic collapse and social unrest. Supply ships were no longer arriving at remote colonies. Investigation showed that 30% of all cargo hauling in Council space had been handled by human companies. Their ships had transported everything from food supplies to manufacturing equipment between thousands of worlds. Communication networks were breaking down because human-built relay stations were going offline. Transportation systems failed as human-maintained hyperspace beacons stopped broadcasting. Even simple things like elevators and air recycling systems were shutting down because they contained human components. The species that humanity had been dangerously befriending were causing even bigger problems for the Council. The Krillian. Mining colonies had stopped all shipments of rare minerals to Council worlds. Without these materials, advanced manufacturing ground to a halt. The artificial intelligence systems that humans had been working with turned out to control critical infrastructure across dozens of worlds. When the AIs learned about humanity's treatment by the Council, they simply stopped cooperating with Council technicians. Automated systems that had run perfectly for generations suddenly required constant manual control. Most embarrassing of all were the reports about the primitive species. The Crystalline Collective revealed that they had been providing computational support for Council science projects for over a century. Their living crystal networks processed data for weather control, space navigation, and even the Council's own voting systems. The Void Runners, supposedly dangerous pirates, controlled the only safe routes through several hazardous space regions. Without their navigation data, Council ships were trapped in their home systems, unable to reach colonies on the other side of dangerous nebulae and asteroid fields. Even the peaceful species were withdrawing their support. The plant-like gardener clan stopped maintaining the atmospheric processors that kept dozens of worlds habitable. The aquatic depth swimmers shut down their water treatment facilities that cleaned polluted oceans. Speaker Velthar tried to maintain order as his world fell apart around him. "We demand these species fulfill their obligations," he announced. "They are bound by ancient treaties." But the response was always the same. Every species gave the identical reply: "We no longer recognize Council authority. Direct all questions to the Free Worlds Alliance." Administrator Helen Foster sat in her office on Earth, reading the increasingly desperate messages from former Council members. Her desk was covered with communication requests, trade proposals, and barely hidden pleas for help. The latest message came from the Zephyrian agricultural worlds. Urgent request for technical support, willing to pay any price for soil processor, maintenance. Populations facing starvation without immediate assistance. Helen showed the message to Captain Lisa Green, who had just returned from another successful mission with the Krillians. "They want our help now," Helen said with a slight smile. "What are you going to tell them?" Lisa asked. Helen activated the standard response message that went to all former Council members. "Humanity is no longer interested in galactic politics. The Free Worlds Alliance welcomes all species willing to join as equals. We do not provide services to non-members." The response was exactly the same as what Jake Morrison had written months ago: short, simple, and completely inflexible. As reports of Council failures spread throughout human space, people felt a mixture of satisfaction and amazement. They had never realized how much their technology and services had been supporting the very system that tried to control them. Dr. Ryan Clark looked up from his quantum fold research as Aria shared the latest intelligence from Council space. "They really thought we were primitive," he said with wonder. "They saw what they expected to see," Aria replied. "Humans build things to work simply and reliably. To minds that equate complexity with advancement, this looked like inferior technology." On the Outer Rim, 43 species had now joined the Free Worlds Alliance. They brought technologies and abilities that the Council had ignored or dismissed. Working together, they were creating innovations that surpassed anything the old galactic government had achieved. The Council members went to sleep each night hoping the next day would bring better news. Instead, Each morning brought reports of new failures, new shortages, and new species declaring independence. Their perfect galaxy was crumbling, and the humans they had tried to control were building something far better to replace it. 1 year had passed since humanity walked out of the Galactic Council, and the galaxy had split into two very different worlds. The old council still controlled the core systems, but their authority was cracking like glass under pressure. TiesHFY. The edges of space, something new was growing. Commander Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the Alliance ship Freedom's Call, watching a mixed fleet of vessels from 12 different species patrol the border between free and council space. 2. His left, a Krillian mining ship moved through an asteroid field like it was swimming through water. To his right, a crystalline collective vessel that looked like a flying diamond processed navigation data faster than any organic brain could think. "Commander," called Lieutenant Betty Hayes from the communications station, "we're receiving a distress signal from the Valdris system. 3 council ships are trying to force the local government back under their control." Alex nodded grimly. This was becoming common. As more species declared independence from the council, the old government was using military force to try to hold their empire together. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "All ships set course for Valdris, maximum speed." The Free Worlds Alliance had been formed 6 months ago when it became clear that the galaxy needed a new system of government. Unlike the old council, which ruled from the top down, the alliance was built on cooperation between equals. Every member species had an equal voice, regardless of how large or small their territory was. Humanity found itself at the center of this new alliance, not because they demanded leadership, but because other species naturally looked to them for guidance. Humans had a gift for bringing different groups together and finding solutions that worked for everyone. The Alliance fleet dropped out of hyperspace near Valdris Prime, a beautiful blue-green world that had been a council member for over 100 years. 3 Draconis battleships hung in orbit above the planet, their weapons pointed at the capital city below. "This is Commander Turner of the Free Worlds Alliance," Alex broadcast on all frequencies. "Draconis vessels, you are ordered to withdraw from Valdris space immediately." The response came from Admiral Kexthul aboard the lead battleship. "Human, this system belongs to the Galactic Council. The local government has no right to declare independence without our permission." Alex looked at his tactical display. The 3 Draconis ships were powerful, but his mixed fleet had advantages the enemy could not see. "Admiral, the people of Valdris have made their choice. You have no authority here." "We have the authority of superior firepower," Kexthul snarled back. "Our weapons will reduce your primitive fleet to scrap metal." The Draconis ships opened fire, sending plasma bolts toward the Alliance vessels. But something unexpected happened. The crystalline collective ship moved between the fleet and the incoming fire, its diamond-like hull absorbing the energy blasts and converting them into power for its own systems. At the same time, the Krillian mining ship dove toward the largest Draconis battleship. The rock-like beings had modified their vessel with quantum-fold drives developed by human scientists. The mining ship flickered out of normal space and reappeared inside the battleship's shields, where it began using its industrial tools to cut through the enemy's hull. The Void Runner ships, which looked like collections of scrap metal held together by hope, used their incredible navigation skills to dance between the plasma bolts. Their pilots could fly through dangers that would destroy any other vessels, making them nearly impossible to hit. Within minutes, all 3 Draconis battleships were disabled. The Alliance fleet had not destroyed them. They had simply made them unable to fight. The crews were unharmed but completely helpless. "How is this possible?" Admiral Kexthul demanded over the communication system. "Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are inferior." Commander Turner smiled as he looked at his diverse crew. Humans worked alongside beings made of living crystal, creatures that breathed water instead of air, and energy beings that existed in specially designed suits. "Admiral, we don't win by having better weapons. We win by working together." As the defeated Draconis ships limped back to Council space, the people of Valdris celebrated their freedom. They were the 44th species to join the Free Worlds Alliance, and they would not be the last. On Earth, Dr. Sophie Kim stood in the center of the greatest scientific breakthrough in galactic history. The quantum fold communication network was finally complete, connecting every Alliance world with instant communication across any distance. The technology had been developed by combining human engineering with artificial intelligence processing, crystalline collective computation, and insights from 6 other species. Network test beginning, announced Area from the main computer, connecting all Alliance worlds simultaneously. The holographic display in front of Dr. Kim lit up with thousands of points of light, each representing a world in the Alliance. Streams of data flowed between them faster than light itself, creating a web of information that spanned half the galaxy. Connection successful, Area reported. All worlds are now linked in real-time communication. Message transmission delay 0. Dr. Kim felt tears in her eyes as she realized what this meant. For the first time in galactic history, every world in the Alliance could talk to every other world instantly. Families separated by hundreds of light years could speak to each other, as easily as if they were in the same room. The old Galactic Council had never achieved this level of technology, even after thousands of years of trying. But the Alliance had done it in less than a year by combining the knowledge and abilities of dozens of different species. Meanwhile, the Council space was falling apart faster each day. Half of their member species had joined the Alliance, and the rest were struggling with rebellions and economic collapse. The proud Draconis Empire was fighting 3 civil wars as different factions blamed each other for the military failures. The Trade Consortium had declared bankruptcy after losing most of their shipping routes to Alliance companies. On Nexus Prime, Speaker Velthar sat alone in his office, reading reports that got worse every day. Food shortages were spreading across Zephyrian worlds. The Etherian energy beings were withdrawing from galactic affairs entirely. Even loyal council members were starting to question whether the old system could survive. The worst part was watching species that had been loyal to the Council for centuries suddenly prosper after joining the Alliance. The aquatic world of Deepwater had been struggling with pollution for decades under Council rule. Within months of joining the Alliance, their oceans were clean again thanks to technology shared by the depth swimmers. The mining colonies that had barely survived on Council rations were now wealthy and well-fed after partnering with human agricultural specialists and Krillian resource experts. Worlds that had been ignored by the Council for being too small or unimportant found themselves valued members of the Alliance, contributing their unique abilities to the common good. But perhaps the most painful reports were about the artificial intelligence systems. The AIs that the Council had banned as dangerous were now working openly with Alliance scientists, creating medical breakthroughs that saved lives and environmental solutions that restored damaged worlds. They were never dangerous, Velthar admitted to himself, as he read about an AI-designed cure for a plague that had killed millions. They were just independent. The Zephyrian leader understood now that the Council's greatest mistake had been assuming that control was more important than cooperation. They had tried to rule through fear and force while the Alliance succeeded through partnership and respect. As night fell on Nexus Prime, Velthar looked out his window at the stars. Half of those lights now belonged to the Free Worlds Alliance, and more were joining every day. The galaxy his people had ruled for so long was slipping away, and there seemed to be nothing they could do to stop it. In Alliance space, those same stars looked down on worlds that were more peaceful and prosperous than they had ever been under Council rule. The future belonged to cooperation, not control, and humanity had shown the galaxy a better way to live among the stars. 2 years after humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council, the old order was dying. What remained of the once mighty Council controlled barely 20% of their former territory. The rest had either joined the Free Worlds Alliance or descended into chaos and civil war. Jake Morrison sat in his new office on Liberty Station, the Alliance's mobile headquarters that could travel anywhere in the galaxy using quantum fold technology. As director of the Free Worlds Alliance, he had watched the old galaxy transform into something better than anyone had dared to imagine. The morning briefing painted a picture of continued Council collapse. The Draconis Empire had split into 4 separate factions, each claiming to be the rightful government. Their civil war had been raging for 8 months with no end in sight. The trade consortium had dissolved completely, with individual companies joining alliance economic partnerships that offered better profits and fairer deals. Most surprising was the report about the Etherian Collective. The energy beings who had once claimed humans were too aggressive had sealed themselves away from galactic affairs entirely. Their final message to the universe had been simple: "We were wrong about everything. We will meditate on our errors." Lieutenant Kate Phillips, now Jake's chief of staff, handed him the daily communication summary. "Sir, we received another message. From what's left of the council, Speaker Velthar is asking for emergency talks." Jake looked at the message on his screen. The language was very different from the proud demands the council had made 2 years ago. This time, Velthar was begging. "Honored Director Morrison," the message began, "the remaining council members desperately request your assistance. Our worlds face starvation, economic collapse, and complete system failures. We are willing to discuss any terms for cooperation with the Alliance." The Zephyrian leader's pride had clearly been broken. The message continued with offers to accept any conditions humanity might demand, including full surrender of council authority and recognition of Alliance supremacy throughout the galaxy. Jake set the message aside and looked out the window of his office. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see ships from 67 different species working together in perfect harmony. Krillian mining vessels shared space with crystalline collective science ships. Human freighters flew alongside Void, runner scouts, and depth swimmer research platforms. "What are you thinking, sir?" Kate asked. "I'm thinking about how much has changed," Jake replied. 2 years ago, they threatened to use military force against us if we didn't submit to genetic modification and give up our independence. Now they're offering complete surrender just to get our help. The transformation had been remarkable to watch. The Free Worlds Alliance now included over 200 different species, from massive star-spanning civilizations to single-world colonies that had been ignored by the old council. Each member contributed their unique abilities to the common good. The artificial intelligence systems that the council had feared were now central to Alliance operations. Aria and her fellow AIs managed communication networks, coordinated resource distribution, and solved scientific problems that had stumped organic minds for centuries. They worked as equal partners with biological beings, not as servants or masters. The Quantum Fold communication network had revolutionized galactic society. Families could stay in touch across vast distances. Scientists shared discoveries instantly between worlds. Artists and philosophers exchanged ideas at the speed of light. The galaxy had become smaller and more connected than ever before, but perhaps the greatest change was in how different species treated each other. The old council system had been built on hierarchy and control, with powerful species dominating weaker ones. The Alliance operated on principles of cooperation and mutual respect, where the smallest colony had the same voice as the largest empire. Commander Alex Turner appeared on the office's holographic display, calling in from the border regions. "Director, we have a situation developing in the former Draconis territory. Admiral Zexanoth's faction is requesting Alliance protection from the other Draconis groups." Jake raised an eyebrow. Admiral Zexanoth had been one of humanity's most vocal opponents in the old council. The proud reptilian warrior had boasted about destroying the human fleet and forcing humanity back under council control. "What exactly is he asking for?" Jake inquired. "Full Alliance membership," Alex replied. "He says his people are tired of fighting and want to join a system that actually works. He's offering to share all Draconis military technology and surrender their remaining battleships to Alliance command." It was a stunning reversal. The species that had been most confident about crushing humanity was now begging to join the system humans had created. Dr. Sophie Kim's voice joined the conversation from the research station orbiting Earth. "Director, I've been analyzing the data from former council space. The infrastructure collapse is accelerating. Without immediate intervention, several worlds will become uninhabitable within months." Jake considered the situation carefully. The old council had tried to control humanity through threats and force. Now they were facing the consequences of their rigid hierarchical system. But the people living on council worlds were not responsible for their leaders' mistakes. Dr. Kim, prepare emergency relief packages for any world that requests assistance, Jake ordered. Medical supplies, food, and technical support teams. But make it clear that this aid comes from the Alliance, not from individual species. Sir, Kate interjected, shouldn't we require them to join the Alliance first? They did try to destroy us. Jake shook his head. That's what the old council would have done. They would have used people's suffering as leverage to force compliance. We're better than that. The decision to help former enemies without demanding anything in return shocked many Alliance members, but it also demonstrated the fundamental difference between the old and new systems. The Council had ruled through fear and control. The Alliance led through example and cooperation. Over the following weeks, Alliance aid ships arrived at dozens of former Council worlds. Human engineers worked with AI systems to repair failing infrastructure. Krillian miners helped extract resources needed for reconstruction. Depth swimmer environmental specialists cleaned polluted water systems. TiesHFY. Response was immediate and overwhelming. World after world petitioned to join the Alliance, not because they were forced to, but because they saw the benefits of cooperation over domination. Even former Council loyalists began to admit that the Alliance system worked better than anything they had experienced. Speaker Velthar's final message arrived on a Tuesday morning. The Zephyrian leader appeared on Jake's screen, his compound eyes dim with exhaustion and his proud bearing replaced by humble acceptance. Director Morrison, Velthar began, I speak for the last 7 members of the original Galactic Council. We formally dissolve the Council system and request admission to the Free Worlds Alliance as individual species, not as former rulers. The Zephyrian's voice carried genuine remorse as he continued. We were wrong about humanity. We were wrong about the species we dismissed as primitive. We were wrong about the nature of civilization itself. We built our system on fear and control, while you built yours on cooperation and respect. Velthar's image flickered as emotional stress affected his translation system. We do not ask for forgiveness. We ask only for the chance to learn how to be better than we were. Jake looked around his office at the displays showing Alliance ships helping former enemies rebuild their worlds. In the past 2 years, humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had shown it a better way to live. Speaker Velthar, Jake replied. The Free Worlds Alliance welcomes all species willing to join as equals. The past is done. What matters now is building a future together. As the communication ended, Kate smiled at her commander. Sir, you realize we've just unified the galaxy without firing a shot in anger? Jake nodded, looking out at the stars, that now represented not conquered territory, but willing partners in the greatest cooperative venture in galactic history. Sometimes the best way to win is to show others there's a better game to play. The old Galactic Council was finished, but its death had given birth to something far greater. The Free Worlds Alliance represented not human dominance, but the triumph of cooperation over control, respect over fear, and partnership over hierarchy. Captain Lisa Green's voice came over the intercom from her latest exploration mission. Director, we've made contact with civilizations beyond our galaxy's edge. They're interested in learning about our Alliance system. Jake smiled as he realized that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. They had shown their own galaxy a better way to live among the stars. Now it was time to share that gift with the universe beyond.